Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's online event featuring knowledgeable subject matter experts who will speak about bridging the gap between newcomers and Indigenous people. Before we begin today's event, we would like to begin with an acknowledgement that N4 is hosted at CHIO, which is located in Ottawa, Ontario. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia, and we honor them and this land. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We also honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Before we begin today's webinar on an important topic, we would like to take the time to acknowledge and mourn the 215 children's lives lost at the Kamloops Residential School and to Kamloops Tisqueqma First Nation, and take time to reflect on the many atrocities experienced by First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. N4 grieves with the families impacted. We are taking time to reflect on our own responsibilities as we work towards truth and reconciliation, and we stand as allies with our Indigenous people and communities across Canada. My name is Mariah Maddock. I go by the pronouns she and her, and I am a project coordinator with N4. I will be hosting and moderating today's webinar presentation, and my co-host Andrew Tomeyer will be monitoring the question and answer box today. And I am very pleased today to introduce you to today's speakers. And as I introduce each speaker, I'm just going to invite them to turn on their camera and give a wave. So our first webinar speaker is Florence Gray. Originally from Ontario, Florence is Ojibwe from Lac Seul First Nations and a single mother of 3 children. Florence's parents had 9 children and all went to residential school except for Florence's younger sister. Florence learned about residential schools when she went to Urban Circle Training Center and completed the Teacher's Assistant pilot project that only started with 5 Indigenous students. Florence struggled going to University of Winnipeg in 2005, and her own words, flunked out in 2008. However, with the encouragement of her boss, Florence applied to the University of Manitoba's Bachelor of Social Work program in 2010 and graduated in 2015. Welcome, Florence. Thank you so much for joining us today. And our next speaker is Catherine Biaya. Catherine is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo and arrived in October 2007 as a government-sponsored refugee. She is a graduate in community development, community economics at Red River. Catherine is working at Mount Carmel Clinic as a community health facilitator within the Community Wellness Program, a program funded by Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada in order to help newcomers in a new society. In partnership with Strengthening Families, another program within Multicultural Council and the Indigenous Social Worker, Catherine facilitates the intercultural dialogue to bridge the gap between newcomers and Indigenous people to prevent stereotyping and build strong and trusted relationships. Welcome, Catherine. And next we have Winifred Vugampore. Winifred is a clinical social worker counselor at Mount Carmel Clinic. With her work, she contributes to the Canadians and newcomer immigrants' well-being by providing crisis counseling, wellness groups, workshops, and advocacy. Winifred helped many newcomer immigrants' families to successfully integrate into Canada by providing educational services related to parenting and presenting laws in Canada, cultural adaptation, coping with stress associated with pre-migration, migration, and post-migration experiences of newcomer immigrants, especially those coming from war-torn countries. Winifred holds a master's degree in community development studies from the University of South Africa and a master's degree of social work from the University of Manitoba. Welcome, Winifred. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our N4 platform within the next week or so. We will share this with you as soon as it becomes available, and if any technical issues arise during the webinar today, we will inform you with details for an alternate makeup session. And before we begin today's webinar, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to a platform feature that we hope will enhance your participation experience. Throughout today's webinar, we invite you to write your questions in the question and answer window. And we know that sometimes many of you might have the same question or be interested in a particular response. So you do have the option of upvoting a question today, and we'll prioritize those questions based on which ones are upvoted, and we'll ask those ones to the speakers first. And today our speakers have no conflicts of interest to declare. And with that said, I am going to hand it over to our webinar speakers today. Thank you so much for joining us.
We are delighted. We are humble and delighted to be here and to be invited by N4 to present during this webinar. But before we move forward, I would like to acknowledge that Mount Carmel Clinic, working within Mount Carmel Clinic, which is in Winnipeg, we are located within the Treaty 1 territory, the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dene, and Dakota. And it's the birthplace of the Métis Nation and the heart of the Métis Nation homeland. We are so thankful to the people who have welcome us as newcomer, where we make Winnipeg our home to be, where there is no war, where there is safety. And we are so thankful to the Métis, the Dene, the Cree, Ojibwe, and Ojibwe people of the land. So today, as Maria said, this is a program that Mount Carmel Clinic within the Multicultural Wellness Program have started because we want it to build the relationship. We want it to create, to understand both cultures, both people. There was a lot of misconception, misinformation, and a lot of stereotyping. So that's why during this webinar, we are gonna see how our program created a great awareness and collaborated between Indigenous people and immigrant community to prevent stereotyping and address misinformation. Also, during those workshops that we use, we also discuss about current issue for First Nation and immigrant community and the diverse impact on the emotional and mental well-being and promote mutual acceptance. And we believe also that you are gonna learn about that. During this webinar also, we are trying to see how we can envision and develop strategy for future collaborative relationship between Aboriginal and immigrant community in order to build new relationship. So what do we do during those sessions that can help build a new relationship between newcomers and Indigenous people? So I believe that you are gonna also learn during this webinar. And last but not least, the importance of creating a safe space. So how do we create that safe space to share culture and remembering history? And we believe that all those techniques that we use to create a safe place that we are gonna share today will also help you to learn how to create a safe space and share culture and remember history, because that is key in people's life when you remember history. Because we deal most of the time with what we hear, but we don't know really what's going on. So we believe strongly that these are the objectives we are going to learn today. And at the last, we give you time to ask questions and comment and give us some feedback how we can in the future be better people or better presenter. As Winnie and I, we are Francophone. From our first language is Francophone and English is the second language. So bear with us, you will see the French accent coming in and coming out, but I like that. It's like a music, like a sound of music, dancing. So bear with us about that. So I'm gonna pass to Winnie, who will talk a little bit about briefly a history and the service that we provide at Mount Carmel Clinic. So who are we, what do we do? And Winnie will discuss about that a little bit and flow, and we will move forward. So please don't forget to write all your questions in the chat, please, so then we can be able to do our best to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And as we said, we're from Mount Carmel Clinic. And this is a building at Winnipeg, Manitoba. So we are located at 886. We have three main buildings which are located at these numbers. And we also have like other building that is located at Dufferin. So we are located in different places, but close places in Manitoba. And we are not-profit organization created in 1926 by the Jewish community to serve the newcomer at that time. And we are the first community health center in Canada. So we are a multidisciplinary clinic because we have so many sectors that we have like doctors, we have nurses, we have social workers, we have so many things in our clinics. And we value diversity and we meet people where they are at, and there is no judgment. People we serve include our community members in our catchment. So we mostly target also immigrants and refugees who have been living in Canada less than 3 years. And we work with clients with sexual and reproductive health needs. We work with members of LGBTQ and plus communities. We work with teens, we work with street involved, we work with homeless. So we serve everyone in our catchment. As we can see, this map represents our catchment area. So yeah, you can see is the north end area. I can pass to Flo, who can explain further the services that we provide.
So some of the services that Mount Carmel Clinic provides is primary healthcare services, early learning and parenting programs, community services, which were part of the multicultural wellness program. So Catherine, is this the one you're talking about here? Catherine?
Yeah, I would like to explain how this intercultural section break down. So what do we do? How do we do the workshop? How do we bridge the gap between newcomers and Indigenous people community? So usually it's a program of 8 sessions. So during those sessions, we recruit minimum 5 Indigenous people and minimum 5 newcomers that have been in Canada for less than 3 years. And as Winnie said, we serve people living in our catchment, the North End, Pont Douglas. So going to Main Street, Logan, to Mark Phillips and Church. So in the first time we want to build, why do we recruit only 10 participants? It's because we want to build it, we want to easily build the group dynamic. Because when you have more people, then the interaction becomes so difficult, and it's a little bit difficult to manage the group. We want really a good result, a positive result. That's why we want we start with a few people, 5 indigenous and 5 newcomers, to have the space to know each other and have time to participate fully and be able to connect again. So the topic, what are the topics that we discussed during the intercultural session breakdown? So we explain, first of all, we use the medicine wheel that Flo is gonna talk lately about the medicine wheel that is something used by the indigenous people. And Flo will go deep in that. We explain to the group the medicine wheel. Indigenous people, they know already what is the medicine wheel, but the newcomer, they don't know. But we use that to explain to them what is the importance of the medicine wheel and how we can use the medicine wheel to lead our conversation. Also, we discuss myth and what they know for each other, because it's a group that is the first of its kind. So there is two strangers coming together. So we just don't start with, okay, we are going to start with medicine wheel. No. We can start with, okay, what do you know? We start with an open question to help them brainstorm what they know. What does indigenous people know about newcomer, and what does newcomers know about indigenous? And most of the time, the response that come are what they hear from the community member. Those are about misinformation, stereotyping. So it's just brainstorming what they know. And after that, we go deep in Aboriginal history. So one elder or our sister Flo will come and explain Aboriginal history, the colonization, the challenge, the residential school, and they talk about that. And also in those sessions, we will talk also about immigration and the challenges, the post, the pre, post, and the settlement when newcomers come, and the reason why they leave the country to come, and what are the different types of immigration. So that is really a place where they come up, wow, we didn't know about this. Both sides come up with a, whoa, we didn't know about that. This is what we heard about. So, and the next session, we talk about the similarities and the differences through sharing stories. So the group will come up with a story, how they left their country. The indigenous people, they will talk about also what they have learned or what they have experienced during being indigenous person. And then they come up with the similarities. So, oh, we also, when they talk about, for example, a place talking about the spirituality, they will come, oh, in our case also, that's what was happening when the white settler came in our country. They changed our spirituality to this. So people can see the similarities and differences. And also we'll go down and start unpacking the impact of colonization and immigration on the mental and emotional well-being. So what happened then when the newcomer arrived? What happened about the impact of colonization, the impact of immigration? So they can find out also similarity and differences. And at the end, we discuss about the lesson learned, the feedback and the comment. What did they learn? What did you learn? What is your feedback? So how is your position now that you know? What will be your viewpoint? How did you see indigenous people? How do you see immigrant people? So how now we can connect, can learn more? What do you want us to do more? And then we come up with something, for example, or we want a group to start doing the beads or sewing or those kind of stuff. So that's where we come up to further activity according to what they have learned and what they decide. We don't decide for them, but they decide, oh, we have learned, now we know what is going on. So this is what we want to do to continue the relationship and build the relationship and tell to other people in our community what are the myth and what are the stereotypes, what are the misinformation going on in the city between newcomer and indigenous people. So without further ado, I'm gonna let flow take the flow again. This is in French, they call it tautology. So I'm repeating myself, flow. So flow is gonna take the lead and tell us how the medicine wheel can be used as an activity to guide conversation and discussion. Thank you.
So for this last group, we were working with high school students. And so how we used the medicine wheel this time was to answer some questions. So the first question is, where do I come from? Who am I? Where am I going? And what is my purpose? And through some of those discussions, here's an example. This is one that I had done for myself, and we had the other participants do theirs as well. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's on the inside. And so this time we just use this to kind of start off the group and to kind of talk about the topics throughout our 8 sessions. If we can go to the next slide. Okay. So some of the things we talk about is Indigenous history. We talk about pre and post contact with colonizers. Colonizers were shown how to survive in cold temperatures. Indigenous people, colonizers traded for goods. Colonizers wanted more and did not want to share the land. So there's lots of different things that we talk about. Indigenous peoples were told that they would get certain things in exchange for sharing their land. Many chiefs signed away their lands, and Indigenous people were put in the hilliest, rockiest lands, which they call reserves. And some of the more things that happened, genocide, blankets that had smallpox on them were given to the Indigenous peoples, and many died. So, and we also talk about residential school, day schools, and the 60s scoop. And the challenges that many Indigenous people face: intergenerational trauma. Indigenous people have experienced loss of land, loss of language, loss of family. So genocide, residential schools, 60s school, day schools, loss of culture. So ceremonies, plants, trees for medicinal purposes, loss of ways of being, parenting, family structure. Ongoing trauma that continues today, abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, addictions to cope with things that survivors have went through. So drinking, substance use, solvent use. Also mental health issues, anxiety, depression, cutting, suicidal ideation, suicide, racism, stereotyping, poverty, involvement with the justice system, and CFS. So these are some of the ways that, you know, that our Indigenous people are dealing with. And I will pass it over to either Winnie or Catherine.
I will just add that, as I told you in the beginning, this is what we talk about, and it comes, we use as a brainstorm. So it's not really, we use a storytelling, so about the colonization, what happened, what do you know? And when the newcomer don't know about really what the indigenous people went, that's where our facilitator and elder, we have an elder or our flow will come up and then impact the Aboriginal history, the colonization, the impact, the residential school, the 60s school, and the why people are because what the immigrants know that Indigenous people are lazy. Indigenous people are drunk. Indigenous people are they use free money. They don't want to work because the government gives them money. They are just drunk addicted. They didn't know about the history behind those patterns of behavior. And when we impact this through this or just water, the challenges and then the history, that's where people start understanding. Even Indigenous who never know about their own history can start understanding that's what we see. And to help them open their eyes to understand that is not all the Indigenous people go drug addict but there is also mental issue related, are connected with the addiction. So why is that? So exactly what I want you to add about what Flo have shared. So we will pass to the immigration because we have time to question, and that's what I wanted to say. And I want you to also Flo to explain a little bit about the role of the medicine wheel. Why do we use the medicine wheel? And why is it the medicine wheel have been as an instrument that has been used by the First Nation? So that's the first step that we tell people what the impact, what is the medicine wheel, and how does the Indigenous people use the medicine wheel. So we don't just put a medicine wheel there that, we are going to use this medicine wheel, but we start by explaining what is the medicine wheel from the Indigenous people. Yeah, thank you. So we go, Winnie can take the lead now.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. As Kathy said, Indigenous, they learn from what immigrants share, and also immigrants learn from what Indigenous share. So, for example, like when during our session, we ask Indigenous people if they know what they know about immigration or what they know about immigrants, what they think, why immigrants are coming here to Canada. So from what they answer is likely they don't have a knowledge of why immigrants come here. So from there, then we started to explain that we have a different type of immigrants. So from there, we explained that we have a voluntary migrant and involuntary migrant. So from there, they understand now that is new. It's new for them because they think people are coming here because of opportunity, because they want job, because So from there, they know now we have this type of migration, and mostly in our catchment, Indigenous, they interact with these who are forced migrants, those who are coming because of the push factors, like those people coming from war-torn countries, mostly these government-sponsored refugees. So now, they understand, why these people are here, and they start to understand their challenges and their issues. Imagine if somebody is the first migrant, or you don't plan your flight, you don't prepare anything. You have so many losses. So from there, they understand what it means to be a forced migrant. So can we go to the next slide? So what immigrants share, they share some of their pre-migration experiences. All of this is a very traumatic experience, because some of them, like those who are coming from third countries, they come from the places where they witnessed violence, or themselves they have been a victim of violence. So they experienced the violence, tortures, harassment, and all type of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. So they experienced the most of this, and they witnessed all of this. They witnessed the killings. So all bad things. So they already have a traumatic experience, and also due to colonization, also many of them, they're coming from countries that have been colonized. So some of these, like they have like a impact on their life, such as like poverty and the hardship. So they have very some pre-migration experience that are not present. Can we go to the next slide? So during our session, immigrants, they have opportunities, like as we explained during the medicine wheel, for example, like when they're explaining their life, their challenges, somebody who helped, or so they share all these stories. Even if like if they share their migration experiences, oh, that's very, very, yeah, traumatic. Indigenous also realize that immigrants, they have many things similar to their lives. So they consider that there is some similarities. So when they share about the separation, like when they migrate, there is separation of families. Some of the family members are being killed. Some of them, they die because of the living condition. So imagine, can you imagine living in refugee camps where there is no basic need, and like, so it's like life is like you live like in a chaos. So it's really where you think that you are not even human. There is dehumanization, like where all the living conditions are not conducive to immigrant lives. So they share all of this, and immigrants hear all those stories, and it changed like the way they were thinking about them, the way they thought about them. And that's really very touching to understand what they're going through and what they went through, because they never imagined that migration experience looked like this, pre-migration experience looked like this, and now people, they share these stories. There are a lot of tears. Newcomer cries, indigenous cries, and now they see that really there is no way to hate each other. Instead, they need to work together and to collaborate and to work toward their healings. So can we go to the next slide? When newcomers share the experience, they share this pre-migration experience, they share a migration experience. These are their original trauma that they carry with them. So once they come in a host country, they think now, oh, I will be relieved. Life now will change. But once they are in Canada, so something is different from what maybe they were thinking before they come. So there are also other trauma, like there's also a lot of trauma, mostly like communication issues, language. Language is a big challenge. So when they share with indigenous, like the way they need to rely to somebody else to express their need, to express their feelings, they even like they need their children to help with the interpretation. So this is really very traumatic to them, and they share this with indigenous people. They share all this regarding culture shock. So when they come here, everything is new. Everything is new to them. It's like starting a new life, and starting a new life without support, because they have a lot of losses. They lost their social capitals. They lost their, they have nothing. They have no income. They have no support around them. So everything they needed to learn. They lost their ceremonies, they lost their culture, and they needed to adapt to the new country with all the stress that they came with. So in order to heal, they need support. So if they don't have any support, then their trauma is getting bigger and bigger, and then they end up in serious mental health issues. So when they share this with Indigenous, how they came here, about the culture shock, and Indigenous also tell them, oh, what happened when they came from the reserve, when they came here in Winnipeg, what happened? So they see that really they have so many similarities and they needed to get together in order to heal. So that's why they start this conversation and they learn from each other, and they really appreciate this conversation. When we're having this conversation, they say, oh, as Kathy said, oh, like this is so they really appreciate this because they didn't know before what immigrants go through. Immigrants didn't know what Indigenous go through. And now everything is explained. They know now, they understand each other, they know their challenges, and they need now to work together because like Indigenous have been through a lot and the immigrants have been through a lot, and then how to build our future. And they start from there, and yeah, we always continue with the session that like our awareness sessions. So when we will also address these traumas and how to keep our mental well-being, and we continue with these sessions which are relevant to their experiences. So because of this experience, like many of our participants also have experienced the post-traumatic stress disorder. They have depression, they have anxiety, and so they needed to work on their mental well-being, and we are here to support them. So through our conversation, through our dialogue, we really help each other to heal and to see how we can maintain our mental well-being. Yeah, thanks. Next slide. Maybe I can hand over to Kathy so that also she can add things.
Thank you so much, Winnie. I know that we are almost going to the end of our PowerPoint. But as I will go back again in the beginning, this is not started like that. It started to how we start is about looking, about asking questions about what's going on. Well, myself as a newcomer, when I came in 2007, the first thing they told me, be careful with Indigenous people. And this, how can we break that? How can we start dialogue, conversing? How can we start talking so people can break those stereotyping and misinformation? I have been working here in the North End almost now 11 years. I've never been attacked or something bad happened to me because Indigenous have done something wrong against me. So how can we break that fear? How can we break that misinformation and misunderstanding? So, and we came out with this inter-dialogue, bridging the gap. We come from oral tradition. If you bring me books, I will give me hundreds of books I will not read. Send me thousands of emails, I will just read and forget. But when you tell me a story, I will keep it in my mind because I will relate the story to myself. The story, you live it, you relate on that. So we came up with this dialogue, the cultural dialogue, bridging the gap. And it's really to start talking, how can we impact? And during this session, when we discuss about the different type of immigration, how the immigrants, what they go through. Myself as I was in a refugee camp in Uganda and they waiting to be resettled. I didn't want to come to Manitoba because me, I wanted to go to Montreal where they speak French. But as an immigrant, as a government-sponsored refugee, they sent me to Manitoba. I said, Manitoba? I never heard that Manitoba. It's look like African name, but I'm in Manitoba, I'm Winnipeg, precisely where there is all the services that I needed to integrate in the new country. So during this session, this dialogue and story sharing, newcomer understand that Indigenous people, they have a history, and newcomer also have a history. And between those two history, there are a lot of similarities, also differences. So how can we work together, understanding our differences and our similarities? So this is about working across differences. Let us be allied. Let us be allied, instead of pushing each other away. How can we become allied and heal together? Working the process of healing together, using how the Indigenous people heal. What do you use for your healing? What does an immigrant use for their healing? I know that we can't talk about all the immigrant people, but we use the most common senses one. So at the end, what happened? The newcomer now understand that there have been misinformation about Indigenous, that they don't want to work, they want to ruin social welfare system, they are drunk and drug addict. And the Indigenous also understand that the newcomer have challenges when they come, they face the challenges. But how come newcomer, how can we build the resiliency? What can we do together to build to become allied and build resiliency? That way, Winnie and Flo, because I'm not a social worker, but I was born social worker from my mom womb. So that's where we continue with talking about strategy to cope, how to cope with stress, with depression, with anxiety, how to build the self-esteem. What are the services that are here in the North End, Point Douglas, that can be used to Indigenous and newcomer? And how has individual, not talking about social work or all the organization that are funded to support us, how can we as individual can connect and cope and heal together? So that's where exactly Winnie and Flo, can we talk about the factors that influence our mental and emotional well-being, the triple trauma from a newcomer, and the strategy to cope and the resource navigation. We talk about the resource navigation. We don't need to be what people think that we are. We need people to change, see us who we are by building residential. The resilience, it's coming in French. How to become resilient people. And what can we do to build those skills to become resilient people and be a change in our community, be a change in the newcomer community, and be a change in the Indigenous community, because what people think about us. And MCC, Mount Carmel Clinic, is about no judgment at all, meeting people where they are at. It means we know who you are. We know what you are facing through. How can we help? How can we work together so we can have your life can be changed? So that's what I wanted to add toward what Winnie and Flo have said. And I would like if Flo have something to add, and we'll pass to the question session.
I guess the only thing I would add is that, when we bring Indigenous people together and newcomer people together, it's all about learning and sharing our experiences and learning from them, and to as you said, Catherine, to be allies going forward.
Yeah, so the lesson learned, the lesson learned at the end of our 8th session is an increase of knowledge and is eye-opening, understanding who they are and how they have been portrayed by each other. And this is an aha moment. Oh my, I didn't know. Wow, I thought that indigenous people get a lot of money. No. When we heard how much they give them for the treaty land, we said, whoa, we thought that we get a lot of money. Then the indigenous said, we thought that you people, they give you $25,000 each month. You came here just to take all that belong to us. So it's a very, very powerful intercultural dialogue session, bridging the gap, that everyone learn from each other and become ally. And at the end, ongoing session on other topic come, and then we can talk like with the one of the session we did with the adult. They said, oh, we want to have a group together on healthy relationship, because they because of the impact of colonization, and we coming from countries where are male dominant. So there is a lot of abuse in a relationship, and sometimes indigenous people, they accept it, and newcomer also, they accept it. So how can we talk? Why not we discuss about healthy relationship and unhealthy relationship, and how to prevent domestic violence. So this is what we learn and what we gain and what we are passionate to do, bridging the gap between immigrant and newcomer and the dialogue. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for hearing us.
Thank you so much, Florence, Catherine, Winifred. It's congratulations on the amazing work that you're doing. This is certainly a program that honors the uniqueness and the commonalities between Indigenous and newcomer groups. And it was really a pleasure just to hear how that looks. And I can see there's a lot of questions in our question and answer box. So I'll just get right into them. Our first question is, how do you recruit participants to the intercultural sessions so that they want to participate and feel safe to participate?
Okay, the recruitment, I'm gonna respond and my colleague can add. The recruitment, as I said, we are already working with newcomers. And we are newcomer. We came as a government-sponsored refugee. So we know what are the misinformation and stereotyping going on out. So we recruit people we call people, we make a poster, and we see who is interested, and we make sure that we recruit five so to make sure that group dynamic is very respected. And then we continue with another group when there is a lot who have been registered for the group. That's what we do.
Great,
and we explain, when we recruit, we explain also what is the importance of the intercultural dialogue. What do they know? For example, for the newcomer, I ask them a question, what do you know about Indigenous? And they will come up with those response. I say, okay, this is a beautiful group where we are gonna learn about them, the history, and then also they're gonna learn about us. And there will be an elder from the Indigenous part who will teach us, who will facilitate this group with us. So for the immigration part, Winnie and I, we facilitate. And for the Indigenous part, we invite an elder.
Great, thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
And how long has this program been running? Did you experience any challenges as you got started? And if so, what were these?
This project has been going for almost, this is the second year. Yeah, second or third year is going on. The only challenge now is when things became virtual. You know, with the newcomer community, it's so easy because they have cell phone. And in the cell phone, there is an app called WhatsApp. The WhatsApp app is the app we use to make phone call, video call from home. And they don't really need computer or laptop. So sometimes we are having difficulty with Indigenous when they don't have a cell phone or a laptop to get in the Zoom. But that's the only challenge that we are having now with the virtual sessions.
Great, thank you, Catherine. And our next question is, if you could share one piece of advice with professionals wanting to implement a program like this, what would this be and why?
Okay, I will leave my colleague to jump and then I will come up. I don't want to monopolize all the question.
My advice to those who wanted to introduce this program in the work they're doing is that they need to have people who are able to run these workshops, like people who lived experience, who have experience as immigrants, and the people who are Indigenous, who know Indigenous history, Indigenous like colonization in the residential schools. So they needed to have people who are able to connect with clients, because like, I don't know, like me and Kati, we have ready this gift to connect with the client and to advertise our work. And so we recruit people, we go to organization, we go to the churches, and so when you advertise our job, like our work, like intercultural dialogue between Indigenous and the newcomers, so they are interested because they already know us and they learn a lot from our other workshops. So yeah, what I can say is that you need to have people who are able to do that, and you need to know your community members. Yeah, that's what I can share.
And if I can add, for Flo, it was really easy also to recruit, because Flo, she's an Indigenous, not only being an Indigenous, but she has been working with CEDA, which is in North End on Circuit there. So she's really connected with people who are attending services within Mount Carmel Clinic, North End Women Resource Center, CEDA. It means any organization that want to implement this, it just use the partnership. The person can connect with us as a partner. And I believe that together we become better and stronger. So if any organization want to start such a program, it can connect with other organization or with us and do the partnership and collaboration and run those groups.
The only thing that I'd like to add is, if somebody wants to do this group, is that to remember that when you're bringing groups together and you're talking and sharing information, that it's about learning, it's about sharing your stories of how you came here or the struggles that you've had with an open mind. And also, you know, it's not about blame, it's about learning.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you, Flo.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Really great advice. And our next question is about measuring success. Do you follow attendees after the program? And do you measure the impact? Can you share some success stories?
Yeah, some success stories, like that one of the group we did with the women, it was just women group, Indigenous women and Indigenous newcomer. After the dialogue, we thought that it would be just 8 sessions, but at the end of the feedback and the comment and evaluation, they said, oh, we want to continue. As I said before, why not we discuss about healthy relationship and preventing domestic violence? So that is a kind of a success when people move to the next step. Okay, now we learn about who we are. Now we have some commonality. How can we discuss about and learn about those commonality like challenge that we face about healthy relationship and preventing domestic violence. And also because of the COVID, but we are planning to continue. Winnie and Flo are planning to do another group starting very soon, probably after June, about newcomer, indigenous newcomer, and indigenous newcomer on a topic that are coming in. And we also use the use of the craft. We work on craft together, craft being a way of healing. So I think it's very, very successful. Those are how we see that the session have been successful.
Great, thank you, Catherine. And one final question before we wrap up. Do you think that hosting this program in Winnipeg was one of the reasons for its success? And would it be any different in other cities?
It depends. Winnipeg, we are working in our catchment. The majority of people living in the catchment are Indigenous. So they are the main people we are working with. We see them every day. We see them on the street. It depends. I know that there is new Indigenous people all over Canada and the immigrant all over Canada. And I know they can do it when it depends if in the city there is there's few new Indigenous people that can be challenged. But if there are Indigenous organization within the city, as I said, they can collaborate, also do that.
Yeah, what I can add is that when we work with our communities, we need to assess their needs. So here there is a need of having community members who can collaborate, and our community members mostly are Indigenous and the newcomers. So that's why this program is so important, because we needed to help these people to work together and to collaborate. And yeah, so it depends on each organization and their target group. So for us, this is really very perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you, Winnie, for adding that. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time to present on this really important topic today, and thank you everyone who attended for your comments and questions. We do see your questions there, and so what we'll do, we do want to make sure that you do get a response to these. So we'll move them to our N4 on our N4 platform. We have a meeting place, and our speakers will be invited to answer your questions for up to 10 days following the webinar. So head on over to newcomernavigation.ca. It's free to become a member, and we'll make sure that we move your questions over there so we can continue this really important dialogue that we've started today. And we would just like to conclude this webinar. And before I pass it back to our speakers for final words, we just want to remind everyone that June is National Indigenous History Month. So we encourage you all to take the time to engage with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis authors, scholars, artists, and leaders to share resources, to learn about First Nations, Inuit, and Métis history and cultures, and to create opportunities to learn and grow beyond the month of June and beyond. We will be carrying this dialogue over to our webinar, and when we share the on-demand version, we'll also share some resources that our speakers have shared with you today. And we just want to thank, again, our speakers, and I'm just going to pass it over to Florence, Winifred, and Catherine and give you the final word today.
So thank you so much for attending this webinar. I know that you have learned something. If there is any feedback, please put in the session question. So when we respond to the remaining question, we can look at also the feedback. But I would like to give Flo an opportunity, just 1 minute, to read a story that has been written for a residential school, as we honor this month as a month of Indigenous people. Thank you.
So actually, Catherine, just because of the time, I think what I'd asked Mariah to do is to add it to the website, if that's possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it then.
Florence, whatever you
that's it.
prefer, we can hang on an extra minute too, whatever
Okay.
whatever your preference is right now.
Okay.
Okay, would you like me to post it on our platform?
Yes, that would be
Okay,
great.
okay,
I just
great.
want to say that it's this piece was written by my sister who wrote it, and she sent it to me, and she didn't go to residential school. She's the only one of 9 children that did not go, but she I wanted to share this story just because of, you know, the past week of the 215 children that were found. And so I just wanted to share an extra piece of, you know, what it's like for Indigenous people that have went to residential school, and also the ones that are just, you know, have experience with all the trauma. I guess that's about it.
Yeah. Thank you, Florence. Thank you so much for sharing that and being open to sharing that on our meeting place as well, your sister's story. And I just want to, again, it's been a real honor to host this webinar with you and to hear about this really amazing, beautiful program that helps everyone work towards truth and reconciliation. So thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone as well for attending today. We hope to see you at a future N4 event, and we hope that you stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.